Okay, thank you. So we can officially start this first webinar of the cycle Revitalizing Rural Spaces, which is one webinar realized within Place Out project. Today we will talk about place-based approach as a tool for regenerate rural spaces. We have as a guest speaker Daniela Luisi from Forum Disuguaglianza e Diversità in Italy, which I thank for her contribution to this event today. I will do a small presentation to everybody about the project Place Out to give you a bit of context of the framework within this webinar take place, but it's just 10 minutes 5-10 minutes of presentation, and then we will have the lesson of Miss Luisi. I will share my screen to show you. Okay, this is just few information about Place Out project. Place Out is a European Union co-funded project about building dialogue between youth and local institutions. Namely, Place Out is about European non-urban areas. So we are focused about the possibility to increase the competencies and the dialogue of youth grassroots organization and local institution operating in in European non-urban area. The project take place in mainly in these 4 territories that you can see here in this slide: the province of Badajoz in Extremadura, Mugello in Italy, region of Gabrovo in Bulgaria, and Chalkidiki in Greece. The interesting thing maybe is that designing and implementing this project, we are actually using a place-based approach. So we are operating in 4 local territories with a strong central coordination. We have several activities that take place in parallel in these 4 territories, but with the same goals and the same scope, with a central coordination that is made by us of Lama Impresa Sociale with the help of all the other project partners. Just to keep the presentation short, we had an incremental logic, let's say, in designing the Place Out project activities. We started with a research about the context, the territorial context specificities of these 4 territories that normally are not very well known and that need to be explored to understand which kind of policies are needed, especially for youth, for young people living in this area. So the project partner started a research, a context analysis, a proper context analysis about these 4 territories, together with a need analysis of the needs of youth and local institutions. So we had interviews and focus group with the youth grassroots organization and local member of local institution of these 4 territories to understand how was the situation about the field of youth policies. So which are the youth policies present, which are the need perceived by youth, which are the need perceived by local institution. This first part of research take place in the first 6 months of 2023. And after that, we started a process of training for youth grassroots organization and training for local institution. These 2 as a specific objective of the project to increase the competencies of the youth and the local institution in the territories, because one of the starting point, the starting assumption of Place Out is that, of course, the people in those territories are capable, they know they are capable to do the things, but often lack of competencies, specific competencies, which are more difficult to have far from the urban area. So after a phase of research, we started a phase of training, namely for these 4 territories. After this training, we are implementing local roundtable between youth and local institution to, after we train them, to make them talk about which are the problem of these territories from the perspective of youth, of course, and the realization of youth policies. So the process is very linear, I think, it's very clear. Place Out also provided several activities, not only for the people of these territories, but also for a broader European audience, like this cycle of webinar that I will present you, because we think that to share and to discuss with more people across Europe about the issue of space regeneration, of youth policies in non-urban area can be enriching for us and also for the other territories of European Union. The three pillars of the project, maybe you already understood, are those non-urban areas. Of course, Place Out is a project thought and that has the clear objective related to the non-urban dimension of European Union. The third that you can see here, empowerment process, as I explained, we designed all the Place Out project has one and more empowerment processes at territorial and European level. Also, one strong pillar of Place Out is the space regeneration concept. So we think that in the daily activity of youth organization and also in the daily activity of local institution, especially in non-urban area, the regeneration of abandoned, underutilized, unused spaces is a central and focal point that can be a moment of a tool, a way to create dialogue and create impact in those territories, because the conceptual framework of urban regeneration applied to non-urban areas, so the concept of territorial regeneration has a strong potential and can be used as a tool of public policy by local institution, but also is always perceived as very important for youth grassroots organization, a place that can be used to implement their activities. So the youth perceive this need, and the local institution also perceive this as need to have the tool to regenerate a space, both for their activity as local institution and namely specifically for their activity in designing and implementing youth policy. So helping youth, young people of their territories to realize their activity. So those are the three pillars of Place Out project that we are implementing, as I explained you in this process of research, training, and roundtable and dialogue. Among all these activities, we have this cycle of webinar that consists in 4 different webinars, which we want to give very practical perspective. So today we have a general introduction about the place-based approach for space regeneration in urban area, namely Ms. Luisi will explain us the concept of place-based approach, what is it and how it can be applied to European non-urban area, making also a case study about the Italian situation, the Italian strategy for inner areas. And this was this webinar was due, in our opinion, because of his general approach. It's an overview about the issue of Place Out. The next webinar that we are going to have next Tuesday and Thursday, there is a mistake in the slide, sorry, in the third webinar is Thursday 18th of April, not Tuesday. Sorry for a clerical error, but the point is that the next 3 webinars will be mainly workshop in which we will face different activities that different competencies that local institution member always need to have to broadly implement public policy, and specifically to implement policies related to regeneration and revitalization of underutilized spaces, the communication and engagement strategy, so how to engage and communicate with young people in non-urban area, participatory process and co-design, so not only how to communicate and to engage, but how to deeply involve the people, the young people specifically, in the policy design and implementation. This is perceived really as important in our experience by local institution. And the fourth webinar will be about EU project design, how to design a space regeneration project for EU calls. So all will be workshop. We are going to go really concretely in the tool that you can use to communicate, to design a participatory process, and to write a project for specific EU calls. The next Thursday, so the 11th and the 18th of April, the webinar will last 2 hours, while the last webinar will be 4 hours. So it's going to be strong webinar, but we are going to, I'm sure it's going to be useful for you. I think I finish my small presentation about Place Out project and about this cycle of webinar. We are not a lot. I think we can start directly with the presentation of Miss Luisi, which I thank you again. And yes, you can start.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody, and thank you, Lama, for this opportunity. Rural development policies and regional development policies in the European Union, in the European context, have different story. Sorry, there is a microphone that must switch off. Okay, thank you very much. Rural development policies and regional development policies in European context, we have different story, different programs and different tools. And only in the last years there is a convergence of strategies, also in cohesion policy and in structural funds. So it's important, I think, to distinguish in European vision, the European vision about the rural areas and rural policy, and the Italian perspective of inner areas. So the contents of the presentation are the following. First of all, there is an overview on rural development and European policy framework, and on the cohesion policy and the Rural Pact. After that, I'll speak about the OECD approaches in rural policies and the concept of inequalities and rural-urban divide. Follows an overview on place-based approach and on the Italian strategy for inner areas. And finally, some suggestions about programs, evaluation, and cultural debate. And after questions and answers, of course. Okay, an important introduction. Rural policies and regional policies are similar but different. There is no shared definition of rural development policy. And in different countries, rural development policy can cover a variety of policies, some of which are defined thematically and others more territorially. And in most countries, rural development policy is largely separate from regional policy and is usually integrated in agricultural policies and strongly related with agricultural teams. In EU countries, it's often strongly driven by EU rural policy, and European funding is the most important source for explicit rural development policy. The Common Agricultural Policy, or CAP as it's known, is the main European policy for rural development. The CAP aims to support farmers and improve agricultural productivity. The CAP supports the economic development of rural areas with many economic sources and support the economic vibrancy of rural areas through fundings and action that support rural development. And the CAP also contributes to the sustainable development of rural areas through 3 long-term objectives: fostering the competitiveness of agricultural and forestry, ensuring the sustainable management of natural resources and climate action, achieving a balanced development of rural economies and communities. This is all wonderful, but it's important to know that the history of the CAP is not only the history of agriculture, but above all, it is the history of European Union and its integration with many lights and many shadows. This means that many studies have provided an analytical reconstruction of the origins and developments of CAP that have shaped this complex European construction. It is the CAP which, in many years of uncertainty, contributed to first consolidating the European community and subsequently shaping the European Union. Agriculture was chosen as the sector through which to unify the whole continent, first economically and then politically. So with the CAP have been tested negotiation methods and also has been built an European community policy practice. There is a lot of debate surrounding the cost of the CAP. And while it's true that agricultural spending is the largest individual part of the EU's total expenditure, this is important. Because agricultural policy is financed by the EU directly, unlike sectors such as transport or education. And this meaning that all funding for agriculture comes from EU budget. And after the Second World War, the agricultural production was inadequate to satisfy the internal demand for food, and it was necessary to ensure the food needs of all citizens. Therefore, the increase in productivity was a preeminent goal for the situation of the 50s and 60s. And in the 60s and 70s, the CAP was a success, but this policy had some negative consequences, such as price support benefited the most fragile fertile areas and largest companies, and in terms of equity, those who needed it least. So in mountains and fragile areas where the effects of support were limited by low productivity, it was not possible to counteract the rural exodus. It's important to say that agricultural spending has become unsustainable. And in the 70s and in 80s, the CAP represented over the 70% of the community's total expenditure. And if the CAP represented the 66% of the budget in the early 80s, it now stands at 34.5% of the 2020 EU budget. So agricultural spending had become unsustainable, and it was before necessary to change that structure. But in the 80s, no real reform was implemented, but rather a series of measures aimed at reducing expenses while maintaining the same support tools, such as the institutional price. The new method provided direct income support to the payment of compensation, and however, the compensatory criteria accentuated the distortion. And in Italy, for example, the Po Valley regions have become the main beneficiaries of payment from the cap. Agenda 2000 is the reform of European agricultural model who must respond to the principles of sustainability and compatibility with extra economic components, territory, environment, and society. And it is in this context that the concept of multifunctionality was born and fully integrated into the CAP. And in fact, the new Agenda 2000 was the institutionalization of rural development policy and the institution of the European Agricultural Fund for Rural Development, EAF-ERD, that is the letter that finances rural development programs of the CAP reform. Okay, since the end of the 80s, policy cohesion has been promoted and supported by the European Union through the structural funds, which finance programs, as we know, with shared management between each member state and European Commission. Briefly, cohesion policy is the other important source to support for rural areas, and we have the regional development funds, the cohesion fund, and European Social Fund Plus. Altogether, mobilize significant investments for people and infrastructure in rural areas, allowing the design of strategies tailored to the needs of each territory. So over the last 30 years, rural communities have been able also to develop local strategy, thanks also to CAP funding as part of leader approach, to which is added to provisions of the cohesion policy through the so-called community-led local development, the CLLD approach, says that compared to other classical local approaches, the people who were previously the passive beneficiaries of a policy become now active partners and drivers of its development. And this is a crucial dimension of place-based approach, as we'll see later. In 2021, the European Commission adopted a long-term vision for the use rural areas towards stronger, connected, resilient, and prosperous rural areas by 2040. The Commission intends to promote a rural pact that develops on all levels of governance and that involves stakeholders, in supporting the objectives of this long-term vision, focusing on lack of connections, infrastructures, services, and connectivity. The Commission has identified 4 areas of intervention for this action plan, which will be supported by reference initiative financed from structural funds and other programs with the aim of making rurals stronger, connected, resilient, and prosperous. Stronger means raising awareness among rural communities, improving access to services, and facilitating social innovation. In which ways? For example, through annual Startup Villages Forum that is an opportunity to accelerate the diffusion of an adoption of innovation and social innovation. Connected, it means improving connectivity both in terms of transport and digital access, as for example the project Rural Digital Futures that propose an integrated set of actions to promote sustainable digital transformation of rural areas, increase their attractiveness for people and business to stay or return. Resilient. Resilient means preserving natural resources and making agricultural activities greener to combat climate change, and at the same time ensuring social resilience thanks to access to training courses and diversified job opportunities. And it's important to say that European funds can finance the renovation of buildings in rural areas, increasing energy efficiency and also reducing energy poverty. Prosperous, diversifying economic activities and improving the added value of agricultural and agri-food activities and agritourism. And on the training front, European Social Fund Plus will support the training of people in rural areas to ensure they have tools they need to be competitive in an evolving job market. And furthermore, it's important to say that the European Social Economy Action Plan and European Cluster Collaboration Platform will address challenges and opportunities by promoting social economy and social enterprise innovations, and helping to pool business resources in rural areas, as well as support the social economy stakeholders in innovation and creation of jobs, quality jobs, and social inclusion. So the four principles illustrated, stronger, connected, resilient, and prosperous rural areas in the Commission document of the 2021 are defined as the synthesis of the aspirations of communities and stakeholders in rural areas to become by 2040 effective spaces offering solutions for local needs, involved in multi-level and place-based governance, developing integrated strategies that involve the use of collaboration and participatory approaches that increase the level of interdependence between rural and urban areas, as we'll see, and dynamic communities focused on well-being, society, equity and quality life, and much more. This long-term vision for rural areas addresses the challenges and opportunities of European rural areas, working on the difficult redesign of governance models, which provides the so-called rural proofing for EU policy to be evaluated also in relation to their potential impact on rural areas. Is important. This is an important first step, but in Italy we know well that it's only a beginning, because in Italy the previous programming period, the national strategy for inner areas was tested and is a place-based policy which represents one of the most important policy practice on integration between development policies and ordinary policies for services. We'll see it later better. Okay. I think also that it's important to spend more than two words, about the contribution of OECD in regional development policy and in fields of urban policies, in rural policies and in territorial indicators. OECD regional data provide key information on regional disparities, and over the last 6 years, OECD reminds us that regional economic divides remain persistently high. And in the most recent years, disparities between countries rather than within countries are becoming more important again. The OECD working group on rural policies produced many studies and policy advice, very important. And I think that all of this contribution analysis has a relevant impact on definition of paradigm of rural development and in regional policies at European level. And in particular, the new rural paradigm is an important policy paper published in 2006 focused on new development of rural areas. This new paradigm is focused on competitiveness of rural areas and not only on farm income. This paradigm promotes an holistic approach to include various sectors of rural policies, promote investments and not subsidies. And the new paradigm is focused on multi-level governance. These relevant issues have been explored in policy recommendation from the Italian case study, an Italian case study in 2009. And this case study suggests the needs for a broader rural policy approach that reflects the changing demands upon rural resources, and it considers other aspects, important aspects of rurality, including health, education, and quality of life. So Italy's strategy for rural development should both promote economic drivers and consider social and quality of life conditions. And it should also support environmental sustainability and focus more on improving urban-rural linkages through planning at functional rather than administrative levels. And it should facilitate also better collaboration among different levels of government. So what is rural? The traditional definition of rural is dichotomic and opposite to urban and rural areas as a simplified economic area. A more realistic representation acknowledges the diverse links that urban and rural territories have throughout Europe can have each other, ranging from peri-urban to peripheral rural regions. So urban-rural interdependence should be recognized through integrated governance and planning based on broad partnership. This is strong and bidirectional relationship between urban and non-urban and rural areas, so can generate positive externalities and can improve economic competitiveness. So emerge several functional rural-urban linkages, such as demographic, environmental, natural, resources management, economic and innovative transactions, delivery of public services. These the figure on the left shows that rural areas are diverse and have distinct needs, and we have many shades of rural. The OECD in 2019 developed a refined typology for small regions, introducing some continuity between metropolitan and non-metropolitan areas. And it's important to know that the OECD definition enables international comparability and represents an important tool for policymaking. So this definition recognizes the essential difference between functional urban areas and the other areas. The typology defines 5 types of small regions based on the share of population living in metropolitan areas and level of access to cities. So these are large metropolitan, and 3 types of non-metropolitan regions. So the first is with access to metropolitan, the second is with access to small, medium city, and the third, we have the remote areas. Sorry. Okay. I think it is important to spend much more words about the OECD framework, because the relevance of linkages urban and rural areas as a driver of growth and an important tool of how policies can respond to, and it's one of the aspects highlighted in this other policy brief called Rural Policy 3. Rural Policy 3 highlights the following policy lessons. The objectives of the implementation of the new paradigm regards the improvement well-being for rural inhabitants across economic, social, and environmental dimensions. Policy focus. The policy focus must evolve away from short-term and sectoral support towards helping to build the conditions for the long-term growth of low-density economies. And this new way of understanding rural policy demands implementation through an upgraded set of policy tools, support to public sector and third sector too. Key actors also are diverse, and it's important to fostering a multi-sectoral approach that engage public agencies, the private sectors, and non-government organizations, and it is inclusive of different population groups and places. And finally, also the policy approach is integrated, delivered to enable sectoral policies that match the needs of different rural regions. This means that different sectoral policies should be coordinated and mutually reinforcing, and the mix between them should be rebalanced to meet different local needs. And this is an important mission of the place-based also approach. Okay, these represent all this concept represented are the main European policy framework about rural rural areas and linkage between urban and non-rural areas. All this informed economy and many different economy strategy and regional policy, and all these OECD also policy lessons have been influenced by another Italian contribution, this time not from a case study, a specific case study, but from a national policy that is the national strategy for the inner areas. I think that it's important to speak about inequalities and the rural-urban divide. What about inequalities? Inequalities of rural areas and the rural-urban divide is back on the policy and political agenda of Western countries due to the authoritarian dynamic that they have produced, and it's visible in electoral effects. And the policy framework for rural development that I described recognize, in fact, the necessary linkage between urban and rural areas. So first of all, it's important to describe this notion of peripherality in regional studies that has been seen mainly as a result of a process of marginalization that characterizes areas along national frontiers. So inner peripheries have been traditionally identified as areas around the inner frontiers. Their marginality is, however, not primarily related to the presence of subnational administrative levels, for example, the regions, but rather to socioeconomic and cultural frontiers. Inner peripheries also tends to be remote from regional centers or capitals, and often they are rural or mountain areas, including small urban centers and small towns, functionally autonomous rather than embedded in larger urban systems. And inner peripheries also tend to offer lower levels of life quality, also in relation to educational and cultural amenities. So along with a class divide, a territorial divide plays today a central role in explaining inequalities and the threat which they include. So we have territorial divides that exist between small towns and mega cities, peripheries and centers within mega cities, countryside, rural areas, and cities or urban areas. And the figure shows the growth and loss of population in urban and rural areas for 50 years, from 60s to 2011. And for EU28, the share is down from 25% in 61, but the most of the fall took place by the 91. And in these areas, it's important to say that emerge three kinds of threats: an economic threat to job security and income prospect, identified with labor saving, automation, and technological change. A social threat, for example, a threat to citizenship rights, to receive adequate essential services as education, health and care, mobility, communication, security. And a normative threat, for example, perception of values, norms and needs that are not recognized well. So in the Western world, rural areas are under pressure on all three fronts of inequality, with the mix of challenges differing between nations and regions. So we have economic inequalities, such as income, health inequality, and material deprivation. We have social inequalities, that means shift of public and private services to cities, and it means disinvestments in services that impacts on access to common goods and access and on quality of essential services. And recognition inequalities, that are often ignored, and this is the perception of disrespect for local values, treated as producer of amenities, simple amenities for the urban elites. And also recognition inequalities mean that there is a problem of threat from cosmopolitan diversity. Three policy approaches have concurred to produce territorial divides and also different kinds of inequalities. First, space-blind institutional reforms. It means that the one-size-fits-all institutional changes can be designed by know-it-all experts and implemented by main local elite. Second, the passively accommodation agglomeration approach. That is an approach to development that passively supports the urban concentration. And third, the compassionate compensations that are the public transfers. So infrastructure incentives to compensate ex post for the damage of other policies. And this policy approach, the local elite, they don't adopt policy innovations. And it's important to say that the so-called one-size-fits-all approach also clashes with an institutional paradox. The areas with a greater need for innovation-related investments also have a lower capacity to absorb public funds compared to more economically advanced areas. And this is an interesting paradox. Okay, now we speak about the place-based approach and the place-based policy. The place-based policy that was advocated by the Barca report, and Barca was a minister of Italian Republic, and this place-based policy with this important document represents a new way to deal with knowledge and power and to fight the dominant space-blind approach. And it's important also to tackle regional development issues through the territorialization of sectoral policies. So it's important, it's necessary to have a policy U-turn. So a policy U-turn is needed, reversing the three dominating approaches of policies, and this U-turn is possible with following two pillars. First, focusing on knowledge and innovation in order for a place to come out of an underdevelopment trap. So it's important to consider that knowledge embedded in the place and in its inhabitants must emerge through public debate. And a bridge must be built between local and global knowledge of outside competence centers, but public and private. The second pillar is about power and political economy, because the local elites are not in favor of innovation, fearing being displaced. So it is often not in their interest to promote an innovation process that would make them indispensable, especially if compensating transfers exists. So the place-based approach advocates the use of public spending to trigger strategic innovation through a cognitive productive chain and a new social economic coalition involving local innovators and a new strategic alliance between various levels of governments and civil actors. The place-based approach aims to giving people in places stuck in an underdevelopment trap, the access and quality of essential services, and the opportunity to innovate. And this means the substantial freedom to decide whether to stay or leave, and is following Amartya Sen highlights. And in place-based approach, the national or supranational policy makers acts as a fair and impartial spectator. In which ways? First, promoting a permanent space where local citizens and networks confront their needs and solutions through an informed and reasonable debate, open to external knowledge, to external values and network. And by also choosing income indicators for monitoring and evaluation of implementation and impact. Second point, entrusting public officials with responsibility for decision making. Third point, empowering private and public sector and public actors and also public sectors and the whole local community in its confrontation and possible negotiation with outside and global competence centers. And the fourth point is about creating a network among all the places where a place-based approach is being implemented, in order to circulate experience and information and create peer competition and increase also a common public accountability. And these four points need of new practices in local organizational fields through the interest into the interest and collaboration in local policy arenas of people that have usually no place in the decision-making processes and in policy mechanisms. So this is a very important aspect that involved in all the history of the rural and regional development policies, and also are an important aspects, very strategic, radical aspects in policy place-based. Inner areas. So what about inner areas? First of all, we have two definitions. We have rural. It traditionally refers to density size of population, and inner refers to remoteness from the main core of services. In the Italian approach to inner areas, the divide was drawn with reference to remoteness from essential services. Since this was chosen as one of the main issues to be addressed by the national strategy for inner areas. And we define inner areas as rural areas with the following characteristics. Number one, inner areas having population loss and low population density. Number point two, an inadequate offering of and access to essential services in order to assure a citizen's rights to health, education, and transportation. Third point, their assets are natural and cultural resources, but are complex territories shaped by natural phenomena, human impact, and the population. Methodology is another important aspect of national strategy of inner area and to define the inner areas also. And the methodology in the Italian approach is important and have an interpretative and methodological challenges and came from research on welfare. And the starting point has been mapping of all municipalities, a mapping categorized according to their degree of remoteness from essential services, and remoteness become key factors of spatial injustice. And this is defined according to the distance from the first nearest service provision center. A service center is defined as a municipality or a cluster of neighboring municipalities able to provide simultaneously these 3 bullet points. First, the full range of secondary education services, at least 1 grade 1 emergency care hospital, and at least 1 regional category railway station. This map shows the first representation of Italian inner areas defined when the national strategy started 10 years ago. They are represented by the green areas. All the green areas are the inner Italian inner areas. So in Italy, inner areas cover almost 60% of the whole national territory, embracing about 23% of its total population, and more than 4,000 municipalities. This is a map that in Italy an important tool, has been now also an important tool of working on this kind of problems. I think that first on any definition is important to match a policy approach, so the place-based approach, with a policy practice, so this national strategy for inner area. So it's very important to match these 2 aspects, theoretical and policy recommendation from EU, from OECD, from other university, you know, and a real policy, a policy practice. So national strategy for inner areas in Italy is a policy practice. And the place-based approach and the inner areas are a specific, also theoretical framework experimented in this Italian national strategy with five innovations. First is the national dimension, because we have a national dimension and multi-level governance, centers, regions, municipalities, and inter-municipalities cooperation. Second, in the project areas are financed services improvements, mainly through national policy, and investments in selected development factors such as energy, agriculture, crafts, cultural heritage, but matching regional policy. Third, the economic sources are multi-fund, matching the funds of cohesion policy and the national funds, and this is a significant innovation. Fourth, participatory approach to local development and co-planning. And fifth, the focus on municipalities, association, and mayors. Plus attention to the policy results in terms of accountability. In the first phase of this national policy has been selecting the 72 project areas that involve 1,006 municipalities and about 30,000 inhabitants. In the second phase, in this current new programming period, there are 56 new project areas, and other municipalities, many other municipalities involved. All the methodological aspects which I have told you about and which I will tell you about later refers only to this first phase, the 2020, because the second one now is very different. Okay. Briefly, co-planning with relevant actors. So co-planning activities are born with an highly experimental character and not as a list of localized projects. And we have 3 relevant pillars in co-planning practice in national strategy for inner areas. First, focus groups, scouting and co-planning with different actors from national, regional and local level. This means matching around the table local administrators, reference of different Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Transportation, teachers, doctors, reference of regional policy, innovators, young farmers, students, and so on. Second is the project partnership, that is not an institutional partnership, but a relevant partnership with the introduction of skills and actors not recognized traditionally by the traditional local partnership. And this means that the role of citizens regards social needs and energies to who live in the places, the new inhabitants to returning. And it also guarantees the contribution of external and specialist skills often not found in weak territories, and aims to encourage the opening of territories and the contaminations also of different experiences. Third, the co-design is based on data analysis, on the construction of the problem, on relationships, desires, and responsibility for choice and for choices. And at the center of the construction of the territorial strategy are not only the potential of the areas, but the most promising practices already in place. So we don't just focus on projects built on ideas, but we listen to the people who practice them, trying to remove the obstacles that prevent their full expression. Development policies, as we says, are usually not accompanied by adequate and informed knowledge about their results. The national strategy for inner areas has been evaluated and studied by many researchers and academics. Here I will not talk you about expected and unexpected results that emerge from this evaluation of this national policy, but I will bring you 3 suggestions in terms of learning and defining a cultural debate around a relevant policy. First suggestion, There are many kinds of learnings about the place-based approach used in the national strategy for inner areas and learnings at regional and local level. At national level, I won't remember an institutional learning about the new program period of structural funds and the new strategic objective of policy 5, a Europe closer to citizens, which support the urban and non-urban territorial strategies. So in each territorial strategy will explain a change project shared by the local community following a deliberative process with the active involvement of local actors. And the programs, the RDF and the European Social Fund Plus respond to the choices of local coalitions will respond to, also taking into account the other resources, national resources, rural development, and so fisheries. And this is an important result at the national level, I think. Second suggestion is about monitoring and evaluation. Can be tools that must be tools for sharing knowledge about the results of what you do. Evaluation and action research are important in supervised experiments, are important in new policy, public policy or program innovations, but also are important evaluation and action research to define informed ordinary policy and informed policies. The relevance also important of the social impact assessment. For example, social impact assessment not to be confused with the traditional cost-benefit analysis. So social impact assessment, for example, can have a cognitive and learning path for the third sector, but also for the administrations and other institutions involved in this process. Third is a debate around place-based policies and the national strategy for inner areas. This debate has activated an interesting cultural debate on inner areas in Italy, which has produced many books, but also master's degrees, associations, departments, also universities dedicated to inner areas. And if the cultural debate is alive, the political debate is very weak, I think. But regarding this debate, this cultural debate, I would like to point out two suggestions. And the first concerns the concept of village. It means that on the one hand, we see other important in Italy resources, important resources that Italian government used to finance their development. And on the other, there is a criticism of a glossy image of the villages. So emerge a counter narrative to deconstruct a brand made of amenities and support a need, to support the need for a fundamental economy at the base of territorial policies with dedicated resources that not are absorbed by the mare magnum, as we say, of tourism. And the second suggestion concerns the theme of polycentrism, which characterizes Italy and which has informed many approaches in the European context, as we've seen. And Italy is a country of polycentric, with metro mountains and metro rural territory systems, which combine environmental and cultural diversity in human ecosystems and logistical interdependencies and many flows. And at the end, the valorization of polycentrism requires a connection between policies also and territories. So we need policies capable of generating markets, networks, and infrastructures, forms of remuneration for services, demographic strategies, economic supply chains. We need all of this, but also we need policies shaped with people, and also we need knowledge based on results. And this is the last message that I want to show you. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you a lot, Daniela. Very interesting presentation. And I think we can proceed checking if there are some questions. Maybe you can stop sharing screen. Okay, maybe there are some questions from the participant. I see all the screen black, but
yeah, I have a question. Yeah, here we are in a European context, let's say, and many topics I think regard different places here, no? So I would like to ask the participants if they recognize something very relevant also for their context. So if something sounds, because in Italy maybe we have specific policies, but it's not similar to the other, and it's good to know how these European policies that Daniela showed to us are reflected also in the territories. I don't know if in Spain you have something like the inner area policy, if regional funds or national funds come to territories with a place-based approach or not.
Hello. I don't know if Monse or Estefania are around, but yes, we have many, because, you know, we are like mainly rural in Spain. I think the 80% of the territory is considered rural. So here they have, in fact, we have a ministry facing the challenges of the rural areas that for us mainly is the depopulation, one of the main challenges that we have, the empty Spain, as we call. So there are many actions focused on that, apart from the European, you know, the leader and the Rural Pact and all these kind of activities, of course. But it is true that there is a commitment. We still have many challenges, but there is a commitment on that to develop this kind of policies, and not only from the local administration, but also for the civil society organization. There are many goals to present projects. For example, we have a project called Rurales, that is a game word, because it's SS is like social and solidarity economy, which is social and solidarity economy for the development of the rural areas, for the preservation of the natural and cultural heritage, you know, that are our topics. So they have this commitment in this sense to, you know, to do it by, you know, the administration, but also to cooperate with the civil society organization, so they can, you know, act at local level with, you know, and try to reach these situations that sometimes, you know, the public administration and local institutions can't do it by themselves.
Is there a dedicated ministry of rural areas? Because in Italy,
not rural areas, but it's called Ministerio para la Transición Ecológica, so it's like green transition, and reto demográfico, which is demographical challenge. So it's we have the demographical challenges in the rural areas, no? Of course, we have the gentrification in certain parts, but for example, in places like province of Badajoz, one of the territories of this project, is something important because our region is very rural and the population is sparse, and so we face certain challenges that makes that these kind of ministries, they are implementing actions in this territory.
Because the strategy of inner area in Italy, maybe Daniela can help me, but we do not have a ministry for rural areas. So it was an interministerial group of work, and maybe the Ministry of Territorial Cohesion in some government we have, in some other not. I'm not... But the strategy of inner area, the interesting things is that, of course, there were not an enormous amount of funds for this policy, but still there was no one ministry coordinating. There was an interministerial. Maybe Daniela, you can tell us something about it.
Yes, it's true. In Italy, we don't have a ministry for this kind of problem for inner areas. So for the demographic problem, we have now a coordination group of this national strategy. So a national policy that involved different ministry, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Transportation. So the three kind of ministry with also the Ministry of Agriculture work together in a national group that's called technical committee for inner areas. And also this group work also with regions and also with the territories and with also the local administrators. So I think that is an important innovation of this strategy. It was to match the ministry reference with local administrators. This was a very impactful and powerful opportunity for all the measures for all local administrators of these remote areas to see in their to meet in their territories the reference of ministry and to speak with them, not in Rome, but in the small and this inner remote peripheral areas.
I have another question which is related to the level of the governance that can apply the place-based approach. I mean, we understood, thanks to your presentation, that is very likely, it would be very good if the national government would apply a place-based approach, right? Because they can have different territories working. But my question is, and in some way, European Union is forced to have it because they have a territorial level, national level, very different, okay, which is difficult to uniform. But at local level, how is the approach that they have to place-based approach? So are things that the local administration, the local institution can like push while they refer to upper level, to national level, or they can use it implementing their policy at local level? I don't know if it's clear the question.
I think that at local level there are many different situations. because we have territories where and local administrators that with regional work and with regional policy, with regional context, they can in practice and improve local strategy. So with the dialogue between regional and local administration, with regional tools, with regional policies and local strategies, when there is this dialogue, so it's possible for local administration to construct a better strategy in their territories. But when local actors are alone, without policy reference at regional, for example, or are alone when there are not connection and there are not networks between other municipalities, there are also strategy interesting to develop, but is different is to have a vision. Because I think that a local strategy as a policy vision needs necessarily of a policy level. And the policy level is the first policy level is the regional level. So we have many local administrators, that are very active. I think local administrator in Abruzzo region, where they are moving on. They are working with anthropologists and they are making very interesting work in this single municipality, and this is a very important work that mobilize knowledge, that mobilize people, that mobilize innovations and innovators. But if this local administrator needs to define the school, and so if this administrator needs to have a school that not close, so for this to fight the close of the school, the local school, the local administrator needs to policy level. So it is important also to connect all the local innovation, the better local innovation, to the policy level, because this is also that change. This is the U-turn. This is the U-turn of policy in place-based approach.
Okay, thank you. I think we can go to the end. So if there are some last question, nobody. We have a lot of people from Spain here looking for at least the surnames and the names. Okay. I want to thank again Daniela Luisi for the contribution. Alessandra, do you have another question, maybe?
No, thanks.
Oh, okay. So you're
I have a lot of questions, maybe. Yeah, there are a lot of challenges and a lot of reflection on this. And every level of public administration, of course, have their space, to do things in this challenges. So in this webinar, we involve mainly local administration. So maybe they can look at these challenges, maybe feeling somehow that they are too big to be faced in the local context. But yeah, we from our experience, we see that if local institutions collaborate with each other, creating this local coalition, not together to go beyond the single municipality, but to bring partnership between different municipalities. This is a good way to move forward. So just this comment, just this reflection now.
Also, there is a point that we see working with local institutions within Place Out, but in general is also the necessity to, from the technical part of the local administration and the, let's say, political, the elected part, to work together in a strategic way. So sometimes we see this disconnection between these two parts that makes the perspective to be capable to face that challenges difficult. So if you are just one part of the local administration, you are small, and then you are just one part of that small. So this union is difficult to conceive in my experience. But we could stay here talking about our opinion about this a lot. So thanks again, Daniela. I just want to remember that next week we have another webinar, which is very, as I saw at the beginning, a workshop about communication and engagement. So it can be really useful and important for local administration that implement and need to communicate their choices at local level with the citizenship. It's important both for technical part of the local administration, but also for elected and for the, let's say, political part that has this need to communicate what they are concretely doing in the territory, what is their responsibility and what is not, for example, that is an issue for the local administration. So please, if you can share with the people in your local administration that work with communication or is elected and is need to learn to communicate in a professional way the policy that they are doing, please, you will help us a lot by communicating that the next Thursday 10 to 12 CHEST we will have a specific webinar about communication and engagement strategy in non-urban area. Thanks a lot. Thanks again to Daniela. Thanks to all participants who interviewed, and see you next Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.